Hey, what's going on? Justin here from Modern Mixing, and thank you for checking out another tutorial. So, de-essing the bass, or de-essing the bottom end, however you want to say it. That doesn't make sense. How can we de-ess the bottom end when there is no S's in the bottom end? Well, it's not so much that you would think about this literally, like you're actually not going to be de-essing the bottom end, but I'm doing it because I want you to think sort of similarly to de-essing a vocal. Let's just say, for example, you had a vocal and you had a lot of S's in it and it was just annoying. You're like, I need to take that out. Now, would it make logical sense to take out an EQ, do a low pass thing here, and then maybe cut out some 8K or wherever the problem is, maybe 4K, I don't know, wherever it is. Now, would that look like a realistic vocal curve? Probably not. I mean, it could happen. You never know. Maybe the vocal just sounds terrible up in the high end. I don't know. If you're recording on a laptop mic or something, I don't know. Maybe it might sound like crap and you have to do something like this. But 99% of the time, you're probably not going to do an EQ curve like this. So what we would normally do is take this off. We grab a de-esser. Let's grab this over here. And, you can set it to a band pass or a high pass, doesn't matter. But, you'd find your problem wherever it is, 5K, 8K, usually 7, 8K is where the S's really live. Sometimes lives lower, 4 or 5K. But yeah, so you take this and you pull the threshold down until you feel like it's knocking out those S's appropriately. But again, the question is, why would we use a de-esser? And the reason is because those S's only present themselves every so often. So it might only happen 4 or 5 times throughout a verse that you really need to knock them back. So that's why we would use a de-esser. Because a lot of times when you do vocals in a home studio or just in a room that's not desirable, sometimes it's the equipment like the mic, the preamp, or it could also even be the singer or the artist or whoever it is. Maybe they're not using the mic properly, so maybe their face is really up close to it, so they got a lot of boominess, proximity effect, the low end that's kind of going on. And we need to sort of tame that, but it's not happening throughout the entire verse. It might happen throughout 30% of the verse. It might happen 50%. We don't know, but it's just those lower frequencies that pop out every so often that are sort of annoying, and then they also help to disguise the vocal or make them less intelligible. If you don't have a very good environment to sort of hear these type of things, or maybe you're new and you're sort of starting out and you don't really understand what I'm talking about, or you don't know how to hear for something like that, you could always grab a frequency analyzer like this Waves one here, and then sort of play the vocal track, and I'll solo this and play it, and then we can just watch. We just sort of watch for where those peaks seem to be, poking their heads out more often than not. So let's do that now.
Far away, I want your heart with me, holding hands on the beach, watching all the waves.
So to me, it looked like the majority of them were coming around here. So anywhere from like say 140 to 160 or something like that. Somewhere in that zone. They do kind of poke up here every so often, but most of the time you can see it just jutting out every so often. So that's the frequency in the vocal that's making it sound non-intelligible when we put it up against the track. So now what I can do is I can unsolo it and I'll play it with the track and you'll hear what I'm talking about.
Far away, I want your heart with me, holding hands on the beach, watching all the way.
So in order for me to correct that, I use the Waves C1 SC. You can use a multiband. I'm sure there's other tools out there, but this is basically like a multi-band compressor, but it's only one frequency. So first thing is you need to put this in split mode, and what that does, it sort of splits the bands up, and it only cuts out where you see this blue dip down here. This is the red sort of part that it's pulling down, and just in this one range over here. If you have it on wideband, it's going to use this frequency here, so I have it set at 144, but what it's going to do is it's going to pull everything down from 0 hertz all the way up to 16K or wherever that sort of track ends as far as the frequency curve. So you need to have it on split mode if you're going to use this plugin. If you're using a multi-band, you probably don't need to set that up because all the bands are already split up. But what I did was I set mine to 144. I played around with this. I actually didn't use a frequency analyzer, surprisingly, but I was just showing you that as an example of what you could use. But I sort of figured out this is the area that I didn't like, and then I just set it up. And originally I had a faster attack, say 1 millisecond or whatever it was, but for whatever reason I felt like it was hitting too fast and it was cutting out too much of that bass frequency. So I gave it a little bit of wiggle room here. It's almost 10 milliseconds, and then what that does is it allows a little bit of that bass to pull through. So that way I'm not killing the vocal too much, or at least I'm trying not to. If you're going to use this on any vocal and there's resonance, you are going to take away some of that natural tone. I'm just sort of letting you know that now, warning you. But this is sort of a way to alleviate that a little bit by playing with the attack. Then I set the release up to sort of move with the record so that it didn't happen, like it didn't release too quickly and then all of a sudden that bass is coming back in. I wanted to hold on to it long enough that it sort of like moved with the vocals in a rhythmic way and it was holding back enough of those bass frequencies. And then I also have a ratio here about 5:1. You can do this whatever you want. Sometimes I use it lower, 2, 3, but a lot of times I'll actually use it higher, like 8:1, 10:1. But sometimes in these lower frequencies, you need the ratio to be a little bit lower, just so that, again, same sort of reason why I did the attack a little bit slower, because I don't want it to completely just kill and take out everything. So whenever that audio passes the threshold, I want it to pull it back so that I can sort of level out that bass frequency at the bottom, but I don't want it to completely just get rid of it altogether, So these settings, again, they're subjective, so every engineer is going to use them differently. My suggestion is just you play with them. These are really the only 3 settings that I focus on besides the threshold. And then you just play with them and then you figure out sort of what works for you. But again, for this particular vocal, these settings worked well for me. So now what I'll do is I'll play the vocal inside the track because that's what counts, that's what's most important, and then I'll unbypass it, and then you'll sort of hear now how the vocal comes out a little bit more, a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to listen to.
Far away, I want your heart with me, holding hands on the beach, watching all. Far away, I want your heart with me, holding hands on the beach, watching all the way.
So it's definitely sounding a lot more intelligible. You can actually hear what's going on now with those vocals. It doesn't seem like it's getting drowned in the record. But there's another problem that we're facing now, because it sounds like by taking out this frequency, what's happening is it's making that sort of mid-range, maybe, I don't know, around 8K to 1K, it's sort of making that stand out a little bit. So I did go in and I did sort of work around those frequencies and fix them. You can see I have, well, this actually shouldn't be here, but I have more plugins on here, so I did sort of go in and try to fix and correct that problem, and also make the vocal sound a little bit fatter as well. So there is other stuff going on, but this is basically the first thing. I mean, I did have an EQ set up to take out some of that extreme low end, bottom end, but I consider this technically the first real problem solving, I guess you could say, that I'm doing. The first EQ is just general cleanup, some low end or whatever, but this is really the first one. So once you put this on, sometimes that's going to, bring out problems that maybe you didn't hear before, because this particular frequency was, overshadowing all the other problems. So now it's like, now that this is sort of cleaned up, now other problems are going to stand out. Like maybe some S's are going to come out. Maybe there's some mid frequencies that are not sounding too great that are going to come out. So now you're going to have to go in and fix those. So, sometimes you fix one problem and all of a sudden you have another set of problems to deal with. And that's just sort of the nature of the beast. Hopefully I was, articulate enough that you could understand why I said de-essing the bass, although we're not de-essing the bass. But again, it's just another way to approach those lower frequencies. I try to always figure out, I'm always figuring out techniques on my own, but I'm always learning stuff from other people as well. And I try to think of stuff that's outside the box, and I try to think of things that work well with a record or a vocal in a natural sense. And sometimes having these dynamic EQs are just a little bit more natural in working with a particular sound as opposed to just an EQ. So anyways, hopefully that helped. And anyways, till the next video, take care.
Make yourself just trust in me, see the best in me. If you haven't read the book, you've only seen the movie. More than recover first, try to get to know me.